Let's be innovative. Let's challenge the norm. Let's raise the bar. Let's be the elite.
A new beginning, another opportunity to make a statement. Lionheart celebrates its roots with the car that started it all. 18 races to determine who is the best in the most exciting form of auto racing on the planet. 200-mile-per-hour Indy cars inches from disaster or glory. There can only be one Lionheart Speedway Series champion whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. The Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing starts now.
The early stages of the 2022 Lionheart Speedway Series campaign have been action-packed so far. Craig Forsyth, Andrew Wood, and Matt Taylor have all broken into HyperX victory lane this season, whether it be through the luck of the caution flags, through being the center of controversy, or through the art of fuel saving. Now, with the season quickly approaching the quarterway marker of the campaign, the top drivers in the series are going to be put through their paces with the first Triple Crown race for the series this season. This is the GRAAFix Esports Pocono 300 presented by Extreme Scoring. Hello everyone and welcome to Race 4 of Season 2 for the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing, live on RaceSpotTV and ESTV. Lionheart Racing Series competition is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloudline gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. My name's Justin Prince. Alongside the booth for tonight's action is the one, the only Andrew Kinsella, along with Arturo Kankipani in the producer's seat. You can follow along with live timing and scoring thanks to our partners at ATBO, Follow along with your favorite teams and drivers in the virtual world of motorsports. Let's dive straight into our GRAAFix Esports Countdown to Green, as the first opening rounds of the season have been crazy, to say the least, Andrew. 3 different ways the races have broken down. And now, as we enter the first Triple Crown race of the schedule presented by Next Level Racing, the pressure's definitely going to be on to try and win said crown.
Yeah, tonight is definitely going to be a step up for all of these drivers. The track is bigger, the track is trickier, the track is a triangle. It is the tricky triangle at Pocono Raceway here today, and it is one of my favorite tracks on this schedule. But quickly, before we talk about Pocono, let's look ahead. Atlanta, Kentucky. We are really into a time of this schedule where there are a lot of really fast tracks coming up, so it's going to be a lot of drafting and a lot of speed and a lot of precision driving that's going to be necessary for these drivers over the month of April and leading into that month of May.
This campaign's been very unpredictable because of how the first 3 races, I should say, on that schedule have fared out. Here's a look at the driver standings presented by GRAAFix Esports. Joe Branch is the points leader entering tonight, 10 points up over Trevor Malone, Matt Wagner, Andrew Wood, Samuel Ryman in the top 5. But it is worth noting, after the controversial finish at Texas with that 25-point penalty, if it wasn't for that, Andrew Wood would be the points leader, Andrew.
Yeah, Woods looked really, really strong to start this season, but there are some key names that are not on this graphic here, namely the likes of Tony Schowen, your championship contender from last year, Jacob Oster, who we thought would be one of the strongest rookies, is having a miserable season so far, down in 21st position currently. So while there are a number of surprises on this board, there's also a number of people who are not on this board and are really going to be looking to turn things around here at Pocono.
Consistency has been a major battle for the drivers, including the rookies when it comes to the campaign. We have completed our look towards those competitors here for the driver standings. The teams they're representing are presented by HyperX for their standings. Powerslide Motorsports, despite some of the struggles for their competitors consistency-wise, are still in the points lead by almost 20 points over Transcendent Motorsports. 40 Sim Racing, Team Race for Sunset, Synergy Motorsports Black the top 5. And what a change a season can make. Factory Backed, who was dominant from the get-go in the team standings last year, 9th place entering tonight.
Of course, Powerslide is there in the lead on the back of your points leader, Joe Branch, heading into today. But yeah, it's incredibly close between even that top 7. You look at that 40 points between 1st and 7th. That is nothing at this point in the season. We could easily see a change. We could easily see Dark Horse going all the way up and taking the lead from Powerslide, depending on what happens in this race. But you're absolutely correct. That start from Factory Back, definitely not what they were expecting and not what they were hoping for to start their campaign here.
How crazy has been the consistency? Michael Goodman's the second highest ranked driver Powerslide in the points in 14th. Here's the look at the rookie standings presented by Butt Kicker. We mentioned the struggles for some of the rookies. Andrew Wood, he still leads the rookie standings. Samuel Ryman, based on consistency and his survival skills, second in the rookie standings. Dakota DeMade, Jim Herrick, Shane Coogan, the top 5. But many of the rookies have really struggled to find consistency to make it to the checker flag cleanly and without being involved in incidents.
Absolutely. It's been a steep learning curve for many of these rookies. You see that top 3 so close, just 6 points separating first from third. But you look farther down, the likes of Gavin Sanders, the likes of Jacob Oster, Will Gibson. We expected these drivers to maybe be a little bit higher than they are, have accumulated more points, but they just haven't been able to find that consistency that you mentioned. So this is really the question, is when can some of these drivers start to turn around their luck and their fortune and start to maybe make their own luck and make their way up this standings.
Let's take our chance to look towards the series details presented by GSI. Season 2 for this series, 8th year in total for the Lionheart Racing Series. And of course, these drivers, when it comes to the Speedway Series, running the Delara DW12 and custom fixed setups built by co-announcer and Andrew Kinsella. And it's the first of the 3 Triple Crown races. Pocono, an original Triple Crown race when it comes to the history of open wheel racing in North America. It's got a long history when you could think about it. From the 1970s, from its first initial run of the Triple Crown, to the resurgence of the Triple Crown in the 2010s in particular as of late. This track has a lot of history. These drivers might have some challenges though, here tonight.
Absolutely. It's a track steeped in tradition and one of the more iconic tracks in North America and even the world, I would say. Such a unique shape, such a unique challenge. Each corner so different from the last one. You really have to be on top of your car, on top of your driving throughout the course of the run. It is going to be a fascinating challenge for all of these drivers here. Especially
for the drivers fighting for the cash and prizes. Total value, $6,930 this year. But this is the 7th time the DW12 will be running at the Tricky Triangle. The pole sitter has won here twice in the past. 3 drivers who started the top 5 have also gone on to win. But this is a track where, if you think about the history of this event and the history of this chassis in Lionheart, you have the tale of 2 different stories. You have the 14 cautions for the Lionheart IndyCar Series back in Season 1. Then you have the fewest cautions during last year's run for the Speedway Series here. No cautions. Big difference. And Robert Malechka was the driver who went on to take the checker flag in dominating fashion that day.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a track that can go, generally speaking, one of 2 ways. You can have a lot of cautions where just cautions tend to breed those cautions, or then you can have one of those nice clean runs like we saw last year. And it really turns into a matter of skill and fuel strategy and putting yourself in that position to win. So we don't know what we're going to have here today, but we can tell you that whatever happens, it's going to be exciting.
Of course, those event details brought to you by Moser Racing. Here's a look at the racetrack here in Long Pond, Pennsylvania. The Tricky Triangle's been open since 1971 and has hosted open-wheel racing for much of its history, but also became deeply rooted during the late 1970s to early 1980s with stock car racing. This track also has 3 different corners. Turn 1 modeled after Trenton with 14 degrees of banking. Turn 2, also known as the tunnel turn, modeled after Indianapolis. And Turn 3, 6 degrees of banking, modeled after the last stop on the schedule, the Milwaukee Mile. 3 different corner developments, 3 difficult corners to try and tackle at a track designed by 2-time Indianapolis 500-mile race winner Roger Ward.
Yeah, and it's such a challenge. It's such a fun track to drive as a driver. You're constantly trying to make those small adjustments that you need, whether it's with in-car tools, if the car has them. Of course, these cars don't have those in-car tools, so all the adjustments, they're all between your ears, they're all in your lines, in your throttle input, your brake input if you need to. Hopefully we won't see too much braking here today, but certainly getting on pit in and pit out is another story here to talk about as well, Justin. With an incredibly short pit in, it's very, very tricky to get in and out of pit road.
Strategy is going to be critical. Making sure you execute into that pit road going to be also critical. The drivers have finished up their final preparations for practice here tonight. Qualifying about to get underway. Andrew, as the setup builder for the Lionheart Racing Series, what will the drivers be feeling tonight when it comes to the DW12 chassis here from Pocono?
Yeah, so the setup here today, it's going to be a really interesting one for these drivers to tackle. In qualifying, you're going to be flat out the entire time, foot to the floor, and it's all about keeping up your momentum and making sure that you're not scrubbing the tires too much, particularly through that turn 3. Whereas in the race, what you're going to see is you're going to see a lot more drivers searching for lines, especially through turns 1 and 3. In practice, we saw the high line has been really, really good as the run sort of goes on and the tires start to go away. So look for that high line in 3 to really come into play. But as drivers move up there, will that also open up the bottom as well? So it should be a very interesting challenge for these drivers.
Qualifying is underway. 5 minutes or qualifying, 2 laps to put up on the board here tonight. Overall, 39 drivers at the facility to try and set their fastest lap times for the track position. Here's a look at the Synergy Motorsports machine of Ron Hacker. Team logos also incorporated into the graphics for tonight's Triple Crown race. Hacker's shown some great speed from the get-go at Andrew. It's just been about the finishing positions when it comes to the 21, it seems.
Yeah, Ron has been really good in qualifying so far, but it just hasn't come together for him in the race. There's been a little bit of misfortune and then a little bit of I would say, strategy misplays from Ron so far. He just hasn't quite been on top of it like we've seen him in the past, but he's definitely looking fast here so far, and definitely one of the drivers that I'm going to keep an eye on throughout the course of today.
Right now you see the sector times broken up for the time being to around 37 seconds currently. The quickest driver in practice was Gabe Wood at the 41.5 bracket. Majority of the pack at the 41.8. 41.6 for Ron Hacker to start qualifying. But he's already been topped by several drivers. putting Gary Gonzo in the 41.58, tied with Ryan Eric King.
Yeah, we're seeing some really fast lap times here. You can see there, as we go to some different drivers here. Here's Gary Gonzo. You can see that there's also some different approaches that these drivers are taking to the corners. Gary's very, very tight through this final turn, where you saw Ron Hacker was just trying to carry the speed a little bit more. So it's very interesting to watch these drivers pick out their own lines and see what's fast and what's not, as Gary goes P2 here early on.
Make it P3, make it P4, because Ron Hacker topped him. A 41.503 puts him at the top of the pylon. Once those looking to charge ahead is Trevor Malone. But keep in mind, the series record for Speedway competition of 41.455 set last year by Robert Malechka III. Be able to set that pole to begin the race. The temperatures, though, a little bit different compared to the past. Meanwhile, Michael Goodman nearly shattered that record. Vern Hawkins has tied that record.
What a lap there from Vern Hawkins, and we are far from done in this qualifying session as well. We've got a little bit of a cloud coming over the speedway right now, Justin, and I think it's dropping that track temp just a little bit, allowing some of these faster speeds that we're seeing right now.
Time for the fastest qualified lap in Speedway competition of Pocono now is Vern Hawkins III. Chris Fowler's jumped to the top 3 as well. But there are still several drivers that we have to keep an eye on yet to put in a time. Matt Taylor's just started his first flyer. Several others are still in the midst of starting their second lap. So a lot of pressure for the drivers when it comes to qualifying. We mentioned the conditions, partly cloudy skies with a lot of clouds circulating over the tricky triangle currently. It's 104 degrees Fahrenheit track temperature, 74 air temp here today with about a minute to go in the session for quality.
And that's definitely something that we're going to want to keep our eye on throughout the course of today, not just from qualifying, but also in the race. We are starting in the afternoon here, so it should get a little bit cooler as this day goes on, and that means that the speed's going to come up and the competition's going to get closer the later we go in the race.
Matt Taylor, first time around, looking to pick up the tempo for the second time. Right now, he is towards the bottom of the board at the 42 flats. Very curious how the second lap goes. Tony Schowen, we've talked about his struggles when it comes to finishing position. He's had great pace in the top 5 in each of the races so far this year, and he's inside the top 5 to start this one, already up on the pylon. It's just been about staying clean for the 31.
Look at second through fourth there, Justin, separated by less than 1,000th of a second. What time these drivers are putting up here.
What will Taylor's time be? 41.468. Good enough for the top 5, but we have a new Lionheart Speedway Series best. At Pocono, it's Matt Wagner by 1/1000th of a second, who pips the pole from Pocono.
Wow, what a lap from Matt Wagner right at the end there. Great job, and look at how tight that top 6 is.
The qualifying session was tight. The drivers are ready to go. It's time to take a look at your starting grid from the tricky triangle. Starting grid presented by Butt Kicker. It's Matt Wagner for Dark Horse Racing on the pole once more. He'll start alongside Vern Hawkins III for Transcendent Motorsports. Shane Coogan, the rookie, with his best qualifying run of the season, starts third. But Tony Schowen tied on the stopwatch with him in fourth. Matt Taylor and Trevor Malone round out the top 6, 14/100ths of a second separation. Michael Goodman starts in 7th alongside Chris Fowler. Craig Forsyth starts in 9th. Dakota DeMay, the rookie, starts in 10th position, with Mike Rigney and Gavin Sanders, the top 12 from Pocono. 13th goes to Luis Gonzalez Nunez amongst the top 10 drivers of the points, with Kristen Jasper in 14th. Then 15th is Andrew Wood. He'll start alongside Ron Hacker, separation at that point 5/100ths. Matthew Short, 6/100ths back in 17th. Joe Branch, the points leader entering tonight, start deep in the field in 18th. Jim Herrick starts 19th with Dean Mall in 20th. Mike Gibson, 21st alongside Big Joe Hassert, driver with the cleanest incident record on the season. Gabe Wood starts 23rd with Gary Gonzo in 24th. James Watson starts 25th tonight with Ryan Keane in the 26th position. The independent starts in front of Jeff Sheehan in 27th with Creighton Carter, Isaiah Dupree, and Jacob Oster, the top 30. 31st goes to Samuel Ryman. Very deep sledding for the 59 alongside Ricky Harden. AJ Musselman, 2/10ths off the pole in 33rd. Nick DeGroot, Hugo Galvez, Paul Jenkins, the top 36. The rest of the drivers on the grid: Gonzalo Munoz, Will Gibson, George Anzotto, and Sam Crow for tonight's action, and Zoto, Will Gibson, Munoz, and Jenkins, all EOL penalties for Pocono. It's time to take a look at your featured onboard cameras for tonight's action, as all the drivers are ready to go behind the iRacing pace car. First, it's the Butt Kicker onboard camera with Mike Brigney. Sim racing is better with Butt Kicker. Visit thebuttkicker.com. Joe Hasser has the Gomez Sim Industries on board tonight, makers of high-end esports equipment and controls. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com. The Moza Racing on board goes to Ron Hacker, redefining sim racing. Go further, go faster with Moza Racing. Visit MozaRacing.com. And the HyperX on board is carried tonight by Ricky Harden. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. Let's look top to bottom at the running order tonight and your featured cameras from Pocono Raceway. 120 laps on the docket tonight, 300 miles from the Tricky Triangle. A chance to win the opening Triple Crown race of the season. 74 degrees is the air temperature today, with 102 degrees Fahrenheit the track temp. Winds gusting to the southwest currently at 4 miles per hour. That's towards the stroke shoot towards turns 1 and 2. Partly cloudy skies in sim time just past 3:30 on iRacing Day, May 15th, 2022. Half a lap until the drivers take the green flag. Your keys to victory tonight, Andrew.
So first off, it's definitely going to be track position. It's going to be so important to maintain that track position near the front. Then you got to have your strategy game on point here today. It's a very different animal with the short pit lane and being able to get out on the same lap in many cases, so that's going to be something to watch. Then finally, just patience. It's a long race. These drivers haven't had a race this long yet this season, so exercising that patience is going to be very, very important.
All the competitors are set to go. Of note, Samuel Ryman did not make it going off the grid. He'll start from the pit lane from Pocono. Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart, and this is the first Triple Crown race of 2022 for the Speedway Series. The GRAAFix Esports Pocono 300, presented by Extreme Scoring, is green from the Tricky Triangle. A busy first lap, and it's Shane Coogan to the race lead early. Big toe for Matt Wagner sends him to the inside, side by side into turn 1 for the lead. Wagner takes it back.
Yeah, that was a very hectic start to the race, especially further back in the field. There was definitely some action, but right now it's starting to string out just a little bit, but there are a few side-by-side battles, especially for your lead of the race, as Coogan tries to defend from Wagner, and Hawkins is really starting to try to get by these two here.
Hawkins the third, unable to make the run work on the bottom side. Tony Schowen backs it up. That's the popcorn seat for the battle for second. Contact referred to is around the 25th position. Most drivers still keep on going though. Of note, Ryman made it out of the pit lane 19 seconds back for the race lead. Everyone else still separated in the 39 spots up front by 7.5 seconds. Already seen that momentum also critical when it comes to Pocono. Dakota DeMade trying to get some moves done. Already up 4 spots in 2.5 laps.
DeMade has been slicing and dicing through the field here, Justin. And he's not the only one. There have been a few drivers that have really kept my eye on that really seem to be wanting to go early on in this race. Luis Gonzalez Nunez is another one trying to make that outside work through turn 3 there. And that's, again, something that we're going to have to look out for throughout the course of the day, is just when do these drivers start trying to get out of line through these corners and get the clean air on their front wings and really starting to try and make those moves.
Speaking of moves, Matt Wagner trying to make one for the race lead. Didn't work. Here comes Vern Hawkins the third, wanting second back. He's clear. Later arc into the tunnel turn. Up to second again is the 25. Warning to Jacob Oster over the radio. He apparently jumped the initial start. He has been warned by race control. He is up 10 spots in 20th.
Yeah, I think that was just a case of Oster trying to take advantage, and a lane opened up on the top side that allowed him to do that. But back here we have 3 wide coming into turn 1. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, the meat and the sandwich there. They funnel down into 2, but you can see Michael Goodman, one of the drivers, he did not have a very good start here, and he's fallen back a few positions here, trying to recover here just a little bit, I think.
A lot of bumping in near Baning as Matthew Short nearly hits the wall in that grouping as well. Andrew Wood trying to hold off Joe Branch in the midst of things. And the difficult thing when it comes to this racetrack is, especially when it comes to this chassis, you get yourself stuck in the aero wash. It can be difficult to maintain that momentum. You need to move ahead at Pocono. So important to find space. Here's the space Jacob Oster found on the start. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Contact with the 7th. About 8 spots.
Yeah, it was a brave move there from Oster, but he was not taking his foot out of the gas there at all. But you can definitely see why he might have been in just a little bit of foul race control there.
Despite that little bump, he's in 21st position. Keep an eye on Goodman. Mentioned some of the short track action he's been trying to work on. Showed a bit of that expertise at the Milwaukee Mile last time out. This time out, he's already lost 6 spots from the drop of the green flag in the first 6 laps.
Yeah, it was a disastrous start for Michael Goodman. He just really didn't get going and just kept on getting fed aero wash. Oh, we've got a caution here.
AJ Musselman brings up the first caution of the day as everyone else checks up. AJ Musselman locks it on down as we're under yellow for the first time tonight.
And the disastrous start for Factory back to this season continues here with AJ Musselman. I don't know what to say at this point. It goes beyond a curse for the Factory back team at this point. It's almost like the cartoon anvil can't help but fall on them. Here we are going down into turn 1 with Musselman. You can see he's just on the outside. There's a little bit of a checkup. He darts down, and then the car right in front of him, I believe that might have been, was that?
Creighton Carter.
Creighton Carter, yes. So Creighton just, he's trying to avoid the 2 in front of him, and it's just one of those miscommunications that can happen so easily at a track like this. I don't think he expected Musselman to be there, but it's definitely going to end Musselman's day here.
So AJ Musselman already has put his car in the tow truck, several more locking it down, significant side pod damage, as well to the 71. We're on yellow for the first time tonight. Let's talk about the fuel windows estimated for tonight's action. 28 to 29 laps was the estimate for this year's running. And that was a very tight window, mind you, for what was based on those numbers of 4-stop. And as we've seen last year, drivers are willing to try and stretch it to make it a 3. Well, there goes the stretching part, because there's a chance drivers can top off here and make it a clear-cut 3 now.
Yeah, but here's the interesting part, Justin, is when you have 38 drivers on a racetrack like this, where you don't necessarily go a lap down under green flag conditions, I suspect that while there will be a bunch of people topping off here, there will also be a bunch of people opting to stay out and getting off strategy early to see what they can do near the front of this field.
We've seen it work both ways in some cases. The drivers who attempted to stretch it at the Milwaukee Mile, ones who got the spoils towards the end, as long as they didn't run out of gas on the final lap like some. And a majority of the front runners, in fact, electing to maintain the track position. No one else is taking the bait of topping off. Till around 24th spot, Dean Mull, the first of the drivers pitting, Nick DeGroot, James Watson, Isaiah Dupree, Creighton Carter, Ryan Eric King, and several others electing to top off for their first stop to make things easier on that front. But it's been crazy up in the front, a little bit of a different tone, I think, compared to the start last year, where, yes, it was a great run from Malechka the third, but it took a lot of expertise to be able to try and break away that year. This year, it seems, the leaders aren't really working together like there was that opportunity to do so last year to do.
Yeah, well, I definitely think part of that is just the level of competitiveness and the competitive spirit of the drivers at the front of this field. We know that Matt Wagner will never back down from trying to take first place. Similar with the likes of Vern Hawkins and Shane Coogan, and Tony Schowen is a bit of a hard charger himself. So there's very little give and a lot of take in that top 5, I would say.
I would say so as well. The interesting thing when it comes to tonight as well is the presenting sponsor as part of this race is Extreme Scoring. And one of the interesting things they keep track of is a driver rating. Joe Branch entered tonight with the top rating based on their analytics and systems with a 25.23 rating over Andrew Wood, who had a 24.7, Trevor Malone, 24.2, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, 4 for the 22.67, and Samuel Ryman, 22.54. That takes into account not just the starts, but also the wins, the top 5s, the top 10s, poles, laps per incident, incidents per lap, average start, average finish, all kept track of by that system.
Yeah, it's a really cool system that they have going on there at Extreme Scoring, and it does offer you a little bit of an insight because you can definitely see how some of those drivers in that top 5 are those hard-charging type of drivers like Luis Gonzalez Nunez. You also have the more conservative drivers who have been a little bit more consistent so far this year, so it really shows that it does sort of reward both, and I would say is actually a fairly accurate reflection of just who has been very quick so far this year.
As well as who's been able to stay out of trouble in some circumstances. The LPI, for example, for Big Joe Hasser, 402. The reason being, he's got 0 laps per incident turned on the season, or incidents per lap on the season. An average finish of 15th and his average start 15th. So interesting statistics being kept up by one of the presenting sponsors for the GRAAFix Esports, Pocono 300. But the drivers are getting ready for the restart. Lights are off on top of the iRacing pace car. It's Coogan, Hawkins III, Wagner, Schowen, Malone, DeMade, Taylor, Fowler, Forsyth, and Sanders the top 10. Biggest mover? George Anzaldo, who is amongst the top-off group in 27th, plus 12. Nick DeGroot, plus 11. Jacob Oster, who stayed out that caution, gained 1 singular spot from the drivers pitting around him to get up to 20th.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, though, Justin, just what happens with those drivers on the fresh rubber. Will they be able to start to pick off the drivers at the back of this train of cars that stayed out, or will they still find it very difficult to get around them? So I think that's going to be the story to watch for in the next 10 laps or so.
And an intriguing campaign when you consider things for Shane Coogan. Showed good speed parts of the races this season for Team Race for Sunset. Looking to add some lead laps to his totals on the campaign. iRacing pace car already zipping its way ahead. 75 miles an hour, the pace speed limit for the drivers. Heavily enforced in the practice starts tonight. Already Hawkins III riding the back wing. Coogan off and away. And a little bit of darting around the mid-pack. Other than that, nice and clean. Joe Branch, the first to try and send it for the 13th spot.
Much cleaner start to this time, but we do have some teammate on, that is Andrew Wood, not Michael Goodman there, my mistake. But Joe Branch was definitely trying to do whatever he could to get around that 64 of Andrew Wood, because he is really looking to get up with his teammate, who's actually just 1 position up in that 12th position for Michael Goodman.
There's a drive-through penalty coming for one driver. Avoidable contact to call. That driver expected to serve the next couple laps. Here's a look from Coogan for the race lead. Here comes the run. Vern Hawkins III, the squeeze. Once again, takes the race lead away.
Really nice move there from Vern Hawkins. He's been one of those drivers that I'm just waiting for him to really break out. He's shown some great speed in bursts over the course of his Speedway Series career, but he's never really put together that sort of full race that's really produced that breakout performance. But he's one of the drivers this year that I think is more than capable of doing that, and he's certainly gotten off to the right foot here today.
Hawkins III again trying to dive to the inside. Yeah, one of his better starts to a race this season. He's had track position early on. It's been mainly the strategy that's been a big part of how things have factored in. Here's a look at what happened on the replay of what happened on the start. This may be where that call comes from. Of note, Carter's had to pit.
Yeah, I think the call for that was for the contact before the yellow flag that brought out our yellow flag. But yeah, there was a little bit of a checkup there in the midfield, but not too bad. But right now at the front, Tony Schowen just got around Matt Wagner for third. Tony Schowen's looking really racy here in this second part of this first run.
So Carter has cleaned things up for his drive-through penalty. Indeed, it looks like involving that incident. Either way, Gonzalo Munoz losing several spots, several others scattering. George Anzotto and several others scattering about. Trouble off turn 3 down the front. 4 wide as drivers try and sort things out.
We were very lucky to stay green there. There was some hectic action. We have one car actually down pit lane for, I think there was some avoiding action there.
Yeah, Mike Gibson.
Mike Gibson down pit lane. I think that there was maybe a little bit of contact with one of the cars on the outside wall, and that caused some chaos there.
It was George Anzotto who got into him into the corner. Watch this end.
Wow, I can't believe that they saved, both of them saved those cars, and yeah, that to me, that one's more of a racing incident for me. George was looking to go under him, and I don't think Mike Gibson realized quite how far alongside George was, but somehow both of those cars remained pointed in the right direction, and I'm not quite sure how, but Anzaldo is definitely not backing off the loud pedal here as he goes wheel to wheel through turn 1 there.
That's in the battle for the 30s. Here's a look at Nick DeGroot. Meanwhile, he is the first driver who pit under the caution flag with those checkups we referred to. He's continuing to try and charge ahead, and it's one of the quickest cars on the racetrack this run so far.
And interesting to note, he actually has gotten by his teammate there of Jacob Oster, so he is definitely liking those fresh tires. So definitely something for these drivers to put away in their notebook here, is that those, even at 10 laps, those fresh tires do definitely mean something here.
Still going to be a long ways to catch up to these drivers. 4 seconds up the road. Here's Chris Fowler, team race for Sunset. Trying to build up the run this time for the battle for 7th spot. Right behind Matt Taylor. Avoidable contact, another penalty. Mike Gibson is the one getting the drive-through.
Yeah, so it looks like race control maybe felt that Gibson cut down on George Anzaldo a little too much there, and so he's going to get a drive-through penalty here, and that's going to put him back with the likes of Creighton Carter, although I do think that Gibson might have also had a speeding issue there when he took that avoiding action the first time. So I think it's penalty on top of penalty at this point for Mike Gibson, unfortunately.
He already lost a lap with a 24-second pit stop for damage repair. It's not looking good for the 0-2 for Gibson Racing. Meanwhile, here is the look with Luis Gonzalez-Nunez now, who has been passed by Mick DeGroot. DeGroot continues to charge ahead. He is turning in clean space as much as 0.3 a lap quicker than the race leaders.
Nick DeGroot is just on the march right now. He's definitely loving those fresh tires and doing everything that he possibly can to get back towards that front of the field. And I wouldn't put it past him to use those fresh tires to his advantage, because he's that type of driver. But meanwhile, we've got a battle for the lead, and that is Tony Schowen taking it to the front here, Justin.
Tony Schowen moves up from the 4th starting spot up to the point. Tries to run away and try and dictate control. And control has been hotly contested as he nearly scraped the wall on exit.
You can just see how much this clean air means to these drivers at this stage of the run. Tony really wanted to do everything he can to put as much daylight in between himself and Shane Coogan and take that stranglehold on that nice clean air, keep his tires underneath him throughout this stint. Meanwhile, back here we've got a little bit of a hornet's nest. Trevor Malone, who has been in the thick of the action throughout this season, is nonetheless in the thick of it here today. And side by side there with Chris Fowler, Mike Rigney, and Craig Forsyth as well.
See, Fowler really wants to seem to go. He's lost a spot, though, with this maneuver, at least this run already. Tries to dive to the inside this time again. Trevor Malone in that 7th spot. And the tough thing is, you don't complete the pass in time, you're going backwards into the run from turns 1 to turn 2. Or rather, turn 1 to 2.
Absolutely, although I do think Chris Fowler got a little bit of an assist from that 8 car of Matt Taylor on that last straightaway, gave him the draft needed to get around Trevor Malone there. And that was a big benefit to him. It really looks like some of these race first cars are starting to team up just a little bit and move toward the front together here. And Gavin Sanders is another one looking to make that race verse party at the front, trying to make the move right here on Mike Rigney. But just look at how well Mike Rigney can keep it together on that outside line, and he even goes right around the outside of Trevor Malone there. Nice move from Rigney.
So back up a couple spots goes the 00 as a result of that respective move. Up towards the front, Matt Wagner, Vern Hawkins III scuffling it out. This is for 3rd position. Hawkins III has really been trying to get close to the side pod of the cars that are to his right side. Wagner comes back down to the left. Here's the look at the track map.
And they are coming up right behind Creighton Carter here. Carter, of course, 1 lap down, about to go 2 laps down. So he won't fight them too much, but that is definitely going to disturb the rhythm for a number of these drivers, because it's very, very important to not have what just happened to Matt Wagner happen to you, which was he just couldn't go all the way out on the outside of the corner. And look at the run that Vern Hawkins gets right around the outside of Matt Wagner, but Wagner's going to try and hold tough here through turn 1.
Speed difference between the lap car and the clean cars in the lead, on the lead lap, about 15 miles an hour. Wagner slides on up. The 3rd again, though, wants the spot. Snake games being played up the road for 1st and 2nd. Not so much for the battle for 3rd and 4th positions. As there goes Hawkins a 3rd with the preferred line, able to make the move stick this time.
Yeah, and that's really smart from Shane Coogan, in particular there. Tony Showens trying to break the draft to 3rd and 4th while they're so busy paying attention to themselves. And Coogan, rather than trying to force a move and maybe hold them up, he's just content to sit in Tony Showens' draft. And while they do this, they're getting further and further away, so we might very quickly have a 2-car breakaway here, Justin.
Coogan's separation to Wagner is already about 0.7 of a second. Matt Taylor nearly hit the wall, meanwhile, from 6th position in that train that's built up. Schowen leads by 0.3. Here's a look at that respective train. Settling things down for the back end. This is from Trevor Malone's front end. Trying to find a way to wiggle his way past Rigney still.
Yeah, Rigney has been doing a really good job inside this top 10. He's had some horrible luck so far this year. One of the drivers who just can't seem to avoid the wrecks that have happened, but really strong effort so far, and nice to see Mike Rigney doing well here. This is, of course, the site of one of his IndyCar Series wins in a shocking fashion in a fuel mileage race. He was able to pull it out, so definitely a driver to watch here today as this race unfolds, because you never know when a fuel mileage race will break out at a track like this.
Exactly. By the way, the car you may have noticed at the bottom line trying to attack Trevor Malone, Andrew Wood has been shuffled as a result of not clearing from nearly into the top 8 back to 11th position. What did I say about the difficulty of making a move work? Wood nearly smacks the wall.
And in fact, it's even worse for Wood. He's all the way back to 14th behind Joe Branch here, so definitely not the type of move that Wood wants to repeat here anytime soon, but it's just so difficult when you're at the back of a pack like this to try and find the clean air, and you have to be very, very careful that you're letting off the throttle on the entrance of these corners well enough to slow yourself down, because if you don't, you misjudge it, and then suddenly you find yourself 3 or 4 positions back in this pack.
By the way, Nick DeGroot to knock on wood. He is in this pack and is gaining more ground still from the outside line. Keep an eye on him as here's a look at Hacker trying to set things up. This is now the battle for 10th. Trying to switch up the lanes back to the inside. Caution
and
flag
we have
is
a caution.
out.
Oh, big wreck in turn 3 here.
In the 30s, Jasper Gala is involved, and we're under caution for the second time tonight. Attrition starting to build up at the tricky triangle.
Yeah, so it's another one of those moves where just 2 cars didn't go very well into one there, and I believe that was Gala's. He gets checked up coming out of 2 here. Is that Gary Godso right beside him there? I think, and then you see Creighton Carter and Jasper here. They're just unsighted, nowhere to go, and unfortunately that's I think, going to end the day for Creighton Carter there.
It was Jeff Shion who was side by side, it looks like, but Jasper, here's the look from cars involved. See a little bit of the difficulty up the road, and then right here.
Yeah, just nothing that either Carter or Jasper could do, and unfortunately, I do think Jasper was able to avoid most of the damage, but Creighton Carter definitely heavy damage, and then Hugo Gala has definitely taken the brunt of that impact.
Jasper is also hobbling at the edge of the racetrack right now. Significant damage to the 44. And that puts us really firmly at the end of that first pit window out right now, with 93 laps to go this time by. Just in time for everyone who stayed out the last caution to be able to come down.
Yeah, this is definitely in that fuel window where people are going to want to come down, but at the same time, it's just outside the window of being able to make it. So what I'm going to say here is a lot of those people that came down that first time, they're not going to come down this time, I think. I think that they will want to stay out, maybe take the next 5 to 10 laps to really try and stretch out this fuel run. But yeah, we're just on that outside of that 3 stopper sort of working here.
Keep in mind that the drivers who pit the last caution flag approaching the start of their 19th lap on the stint, in total about 17 green flag laps on their tires and with their fuel. Race leaders coming in, but look at that, Dakota DeMade has elected to stay out here.
Really interesting call from Dakota DeMade. I'm not quite sure what the play is for him, because he's got to have no more than 5 more laps of fuel, even with the caution flag that we've seen. So very interesting play from him. I think he knows that he can't make it from here, but at the same time, I don't know. I don't know if I like this call.
First off the pit lane is this time by Tony Shawan. It's worth noting DeMade was not the only one to try this, because his teammates in Matt Taylor and Chris Fowler also electing to roll the dice with him. Nick DeGroot and Paul Jenkins, the only drivers who pit the previous caution, who stayed out there as well. In our words, the field a little bit flipped here, with several drivers having to pit potentially within a couple laps of the green.
Yeah, definitely some very interesting strategy calls, but the driver that I really like the looks of right now is Nick DeGroot and Paul Jenkins as well. I think that was 100% the right call for them, and I'm surprised that more people from that second group of drivers who came in on that first caution didn't stay out here, because it's going to be a very tough stretch for a lot of these drivers to make it on 2 stops from here. Whereas Nick DeGroot, he can go full bore on the drop of the green flag. He's got about 10 laps here before he really needs to come down pit road, so I really like what he's doing right now.
It'd be a big change of the tides when it comes to Nick DeGroot. He had some bad luck to start off the season, had some real-world commitments, some of the dates as well. Now looking to really find a way to execute here with this strategy with 92 to go this time. Green flag expected about 91 to go based on the pace car lights. See if any of the drivers staying out this time elect to come in. Mike Gibson does with the damage. Everyone else has made their bet on their strategy call. So with 1 to go until the restart, it's DeMade, Taylor, Fowler, DeGroot, Jenkins the top 5. All of them stayed out this caution flag. Tony Shawan the first off the pit lane with Matt Wagner, Shane Coogan the top 3 off the lane. They're 6 through 8. Vernon Hawkins the third, Craig Forsyth the top 10 on the racetrack. For this upcoming restart, no lap cars mixed in amongst that top 10 currently. Several others have elected to top off here towards the back. Godso, Ryman, Will Gibson, amongst those competitors who have ducked down this time with their ability to still come in since they pit the previous time around. Gonna be a nerve-wracking time, I think, for some of the drivers, you have to say, though.
Absolutely. The one thing that I will say in the top 3's favor is that they do have teammates around them. So those 3 race first cars leading this race right now, it definitely will help them when they come down pit road, that they'll probably be coming down pit lane all together. They'll be able to draft off each other and maybe, just maybe, make some time up that way. And it all shakes out right for them in the end. But the thing that all of these drivers who stayed out are really going to hope for no more caution flags for a good chunk of time here.
It's going to be intriguing how this all comes to be. Biggest mover for this upcoming restart, by the way, Nick DeGroot with the strategy call at plus 30. He's been upper-handed, though, by Paul Jenkins, plus 31. Biggest of those who pit, Jacob Oster, plus 12. He's at 18th. Most spots lost on track, who is still running, Mike Gibson, minus 15. All set to get back underway for the GRAAFix Esports Pocono 300, presented by Extreme Scoring, the first Triple Crown race of the 2022 season. Pace car is off, green flag is waving, off and away we go. On some checkups around the edges of the top 10. First car to bobble out, Trevor Malone. He tries to pass 2 cars at once to move into the top 9. Another bit of a dart for DeGroot. He can't find a way getting side by side with Fowler.
Really tight stuff. That's Malone and Vern Hawkins III nearly scraping the wall off of 2 or off of 1 there. Really close stuff, but at the front of the field, this is, I think, where we need to keep our eyes for the next little bit here is Nick DeGroot. What can he do with these 3 race first cars in front of him? Will he be able to slice through on those slightly fresher tires, or will the race first cars be able to hold him at bay here?
Keep an eye on the first who pit under that caution flag last time about Tony Schowen is already past Paul Jenkins. His other competitors are boxed in behind the brownish and black machine. Wagner, Coogan, Hawkins III all lined up in a row trying to find themselves to dart around, all while DeGroot tries to run high, wide, and handsome 3 wide behind him.
You can't really do that for too long around turn 1 here at Pocono, but they just barely made it work there. But Trevor Malone and Matt Wagner, they're really scrambling for some clean air. I think at this point they're just it's one of those starts where you just need to calm yourself down, calm your heart rate down. Meanwhile, Tony Schowen on those fresh tires, we saw Nick DeGroot going forward. He's right on the back of Nick DeGroot now and looking to definitely take advantage of the fresh tires while they last.
Still not been able to find a way forward yet, though. Same can be said for DeGroot as he runs the high line again. Schowen running the low line to get some clean air.
And look at just how much better grip that Schowen had on the exit of that corner, and that's where you make up all of your time on these newer tires, is you're just able to get off the corner so much better and carry that momentum all the way down the straightaway, and that's exactly what Tony's trying to do right now.
Nick DeGroot has peeled Chris Fowler off the wall, however. Fowler tries to run the bottom to close that back up. Into the wall goes DeGroot. DeGroot's in the wall.
Yeah, that was just too high right now from DeGroot. I don't think he'd run that line very much, and it just caught him out a little bit. I think he might have got away with minimal damage there, but we'll have to see whether he's able to gather up the car here and see if he's got a performance hit here.
It'd be very minor contact, if at all. It was within inches at the very minimum when it comes to that exit. Regardless, DeGroot has fallen back to the point where he is only a car length in front, or a position in front of Paul Jenkins now. Here's a look now as Tony Schowen tries to take advantage of all this. He's stuck side by side, though, with Matt Wagner. Wagner has taken the top spot of those who pit under the last caution. Check that second. Shane Coogan's already up to 3rd with this.
Yeah, Wagner and Coogan, Schowen got really checked up by DeGroot on the outside, and Wagner and Coogan went straight down the inside. And what a move there from Coogan into turn 1. That was just a power move on the fresh tires, and he goes straight to the front of this field.
Up to 8 miles an hour quicker was Coogan on that entry. Shane Coogan retakes the race lead. Matt Wagner battles side by side with Taylor now. To the outside goes Hawkins III. 1 car in trouble. That's Ryan Eric Kane. We stay green for now.
Yeah, I think we'll just get away with that because King didn't come back onto the racing surface there, so I think we should be good there. But yeah, Matt Wagner, he sent it into turn 2 there, Justin, but he had to give back all of that momentum that he gained on the exit because he wasn't able to clear the car he was trying to. And then it has just caused chaos in this top 10, the back half here. Here's a replay, and it just looked like it was just a little bit of, again, miscommunication between drivers. Just gets basically a forearm shiver there from George Anzaldo, and I think there might have been some netcode contact going into that where when King pulled out there, got George Anzaldo a little bit squirrely, and that's what made him go down. But here comes Dakota DeMade, again, 5 laps after green flag, he is on pit lane.
This was to be expected. Taylor and Fowler are still chugging along, though, for the next lap or so. Pit window open for those who tried to stay around. So things are getting really intriguing. By the way, it seems AJ Musselman may be trying to get back on the racetrack. Remember, he's got a meatball flag from the hard contact. He may be amongst those trying to wait it out to try and pick off position to the DNFs early. We'll keep an eye on that storyline later on. Taylor's coming in, meanwhile, into the lane this time by. He's indicated it over the radio.
Yeah, so this is all she wrote for those drivers who have not made a pit stop yet. And here's the interesting part is when you see the likes of Fowler coming in, that's really going to allow Shawan and Hawkins to try and get back into the draft, but there's a very big gap in between Wagner and Shawan, so we might just have another top two breaking away here to start this second stint here, Justin.
Similar trends to last year right now forming, but Hawkins the third wants to pass Fowler before the stop. Oh, near contact with the wheel as Fowler indicates he wants to pit.
Yeah, and the tough thing for Fowler is he needs to be on the inside here in order to get into this pit entry. Again, very, very difficult to get in. You can see him having to peel off right there. And basically, as soon as you get out of turn 3, you have to be on the brakes as hard as you can. And in fact, Fowler spins on pit entry.
Fowler, the first pit mistake, in trouble on the entry. Fowler, his struggles on strategy calls this season continue. We stay green, however, despite that trouble was referred to. By the way, the drivers who have elected to pit on the different strategy maintain the lead lap, which you can do at Pocono as long as you've got the track positioning.
And as long as you don't spin on pit entry, which unfortunately will mean that Fowler will definitely be going a lap down here, Justin.
And he has to take extra time. Here's a look at what you saw, Andrew. Talk us through it.
Yeah, he just gets on the brakes too hard and he loses it, and unfortunately that's right behind that stands there, but yeah, he gets on the brakes, he's trying to get the car woed down, and then he locks up the brakes, locks the rear tires, and then into the inside wall, and that's definitely going to be a front wing change at the very least for Fowler, and probably, unless a miracle happens, he's got a long way to go just to get back on the lead lap here.
Can't confirm a wing change has been made for that race car. He is one of the last cars running on the track now because of that. Here's a look at the battle for 12. Paul Jenkins. He's also yet to pit. He's on the same cycle as Nick DeGroot. And how things can change. DeGroot and Jenkins, 9th and 12th on the racetrack with their call.
Yeah, this is exactly why you wanted to make the call that you did. Even though Nick DeGroot wasn't able to really hang out where he probably was hoping to, he's still ahead of where he was on the track before this, and he'll look good on the strategy come the end of this race. The big thing for Nick DeGroot is that when he gets out and makes his pit stop, that he gets in and around those two race first cars that can potentially allow him to draft back up and really get some time back here, because that will be where he really starts to make some time up if he's able to do that.
Absolutely, when it comes to how things are faring out here, Coogan, the race leader, 2/10, 80 laps to go, this time by a third of the way through the first of the Triple Crown races for the season. Take a look as some of the drivers cycle about. By the way, Fowler is in the midst of all this traffic. Some of the drivers being hurt by that. Ron Hacker, who loses a spot this time to Craig Forsyth.
Yeah, this is definitely not what some of these drivers are looking for, because of course Fowler is on the fresh tires as well, and we do have the rules in the IndyCar series that if the driver who is a lap down is fast enough, they can fight and pass the leaders on the lead lap. So I think that's what Fowler is going to try and do. He's going to try and get his lap back the hard way here, but he definitely won't make too many friends while doing that.
There are two packs starting to form, by the way. Tony Shawan is amongst those trying to maintain the main grouping of cars. There was also 11 and 12 separated until a second ago by more than a second, and is back to that point. Luis Gonzalez Nunez is currently the first of what can be considered Pack 2. Pack 1's about to lose some cars, though, because the drivers in front of him, Nick DeGroot, amongst them, have indicated they'll be pitting. Paul Jenkins, he's really backing it down to find a hole himself as well. Those two very tight on the fuel. Here comes DeGroot.
And of course the lap here is so long, so you can't afford to miscalculate your fuel at all. Nick DeGroot, really nice pit entry there, no drama there, but the big story is I think Chris Fowler has just gotten around the leader, and oh no, Tony Schowen and Vern Hawkins the third. That's a big crash, but it looks like we might just stay green here.
Both of them off the racing surface. Hawkins the third, here he comes back onto it. We stay green for now as DeGroot completes his service. And the bad luck for Tony Schowen continues. Another top 5 run starting off. Another incident around the midway point.
I really don't know what to say when it comes to Tony Schowen's luck at this point. He's on the outside there. It looks like Vern Hawkins just drifts up the track just a little bit. He gets a face full of air wash from, I believe that's Matt Wagner, and then there's an awful lot of air in between those two cars before they make contact, Justin.
One of the hardest hits of the day today, and that will take Tony Schowen long time to recover points-wise, possibly. Hawkins the third as well, you could say the same. Jenkins also completed his stop, so all the drivers who elected to stay out last caution had completed their service. They are about a half a cycle difference compared to everybody else, though. Already 17 laps into the stint, including the pace laps, is everybody else.
Yeah, the strategy, it's going to be very, very interesting to see how, especially the drivers who came in on that last caution, how they fare out in terms of saving some fuel here, because as you mentioned, there's definitely going to be some tight fuel numbers for some of these drivers to make.
With all this cycling, though, we were talking about how Ron Hacker was losing ground earlier, was dropping outside the top 10. All of a sudden, he's up to third in all this, and up 13 spots from his starting position. Where did this come from?
Well, I mean, it doesn't hurt when third and fourth position take themselves out in front of you, but Ron Hacker's done a really, really good job of just keeping his nose clean, quietly moving up this field, and he's put himself in very nice position here.
The other thing to note, though, is you may notice the separation with all those drivers having to dodge. Andrew Wood is now leading what is now Pack 2. So he has lost about a second or so, along with Rigney, Nunez, Sanders, and Jacob Oster as a result of that trouble.
And Jacob Oster up 20 positions. He is knocking on the door of this top 10. So now the question is for Jacob Oster. We've seen him move up through this field a few times, but will he be able to actually close out a race here and keep on this momentum that he's built up throughout this first half of the stint?
Starting lap 47, 120 here from Pocono. This is the GRAAFix Esports Pocono 300, presented by Extreme Scoring and RaceSpotTV and ESTV. Shane Coogan, the race leader, here from the Pocono Mountains. We'll be back right after this.
With the Butt Kicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Butt Kicker. The future is feeling.
Welcome back to tonight's coverage of the GRAAFix Esports Pocono 300 presented by Extreme Scoring. Here on RaceSpotTV and ESTV as the Lionheart Speedway Series and its first Triple Crown race of the season chugs along. Justin Prince, Andrew Kinsella with you with our producer on Arjuna Kenkipati as we continue on with the pack starting to form, grouping to 5, 6, and a little bit higher in some cases starting to form, with some of those race leaders in some of those packs really not wanting to sit still, such as Ron Hacker.
Yeah, this is definitely not one of those races where anybody's very interested in staying where they are. They all want to try and lead, and we suspected this might be the case early on. It's been fast and furious action so far, but I think one of the stories of the day is just how strong Ron Hacker has looked in this car here today. He's really been putting on a show, and he's looking to get the lead here, Justin.
One of his best runs in the series in general so far. Ron Hacker looking to lead some laps. Within a tenth of a second currently last time by with the slipstream. 42.3 was on the stopwatch. Drivers without the slipstream, some of the checkups. 42.7. Here he goes to the outside. Ron Hacker looking for the lead for the first time today from Pocono. Shane Coogan not giving it up without a fight though on the inside. Squeezing down from the top line is Hacker. Coogan tries to keep his foot in it. Keeps it side by side, but Hacker's got the run to take the lead.
That 21 car just looks hooked up here today, Justin. He really knows where to put his car in order to make it succeed and really carry that momentum that we've talked about so much already today. But Shane Coogan, he definitely doesn't want to let Ron Hacker get away here. He is definitely pressuring the back of that 21 car.
Coogan already struggling in turn with the aero wash behind. Big time moves made by the 21 to say the very least. By the way, they are starting to reach lap traffic potential. You see that car up the road? That is Chris Fowler. And to reference something you discussed a bit with some of the viewers watching along on RaceSpotTV tonight, you have to wonder if the cartoon anvil will stop at one point to fall on top of the 20 cars driver.
Yeah,
Oh, look at this, though. Coogan's going for the send. Coogan wants to try and find his way with the Acme rocket boosters to the race lead.
Yeah, and you can just see how powerful the draft is just from that one shot. That was all 100% Shane Coogan taking that draft and running with it down that long pond straightaway. But Ron Hacker, you can see he's not letting him go, and I wouldn't be surprised if we very soon would start to see these two maybe do some little bit of co-opetition here and start doing some swap drafting.
Oh, I remember that term during schooling days. That was a hard term to try and figure things out with the cooperation or cooperation. You know what I'm saying. Either way, Hacker is looking to try and find a way forward, but the effectiveness of the said slipstream you're talking about in all seriousness is very important. Because that was one of the ways, remember, Electrical Third dominated at Pocono last year.
Yeah, it's really, really important to use the slipstream to your advantage. And one thing I will say is it can also be used not just to get yourself in front of the car, but it can also be used to save fuel. So I'm wondering as well, Justin, we were wondering if some of these drivers would be able to make it from here. Is this an indication that maybe they can't, or maybe that they're all very safe on making it? Because we know that the likes of Matt Taylor, Chris Fowler, they'll be able to make it from where they stopped, but will these drivers?
Well, you just got your answer because Luis Gonzalez-Nunez, lap 29 to his stint, just signaled he'll have to pit this time by in the 14 car, so the pit window is open for those who came around under the last caution.
And that certainly means that Luis Gonzalez-Nunez won't be able to make it on just one more stop after this. It'll definitely be at least 2 more stops for Luis Gonzalez-Nunez because he would have to go 32 laps per stint if he were to make it from here.
Which is a very difficult thing to do based on the numbers. That's about 27 green flag laps total turn, by the way, before that window start. But with the swap draft, Coogan and Hacker are broken away. But one of the drivers who has been a little bit surprising today, Joe Branch, is in 11th position. The points leader has not been able to make his way through the traffic today.
No, but it is sort of that prototypical Joe Branch type of race, isn't it? He just slowly makes his way through the field. He doesn't necessarily pull any of the flashy moves that, say, a Matt Wagner does, but by the end of the race, he always seems to find himself in and around that top 10. And on a fuel mileage race, there's very few people in this series that I trust more than Joe Branch to get that number that he needs.
Absolutely. There's a reason consistency has been a big part of the series and a big part of the season so far. The drivers last season in particular who battled for the championship had major streaks of inconsistency. In some cases took them out of the conversation. Late goings by the time things went to Auto Club. Behind Joe Branch, you see, though, interesting lines being still taken. We talked about how lines could be big. Shane Coogan and Ron Hacker taking different lines for their entry, by the way.
Yeah, so that's your top two in on lap 59, so it might just be doable for them. I make that to be a 31 and a 30 stint for them, so they might just be on the edge of that window for making it, but it'll be a tough ask for them. It's these drivers that are still on track that I'm really interested in, though. The likes of Matt Wagner, Craig Forsyth, Trevor Malone, they're much, much closer to make it, and every lap that they do at this point, that's more money in the bank in terms of not having to fuel save later on in this race, as Matt Wagner pulls into the pits.
Matt Wagner indeed in. Joe Hasser also is calling a pit stop this time by. Of note, George Anzotto, a 23-second pit stop, having to get some repairs done. This is all wow. Things get interesting on how things cycle here, especially with the drivers on different strategies. Take a look, for example, at one of those who's completed the stop in Coogan. He cycled a fair bit ahead of Ron Hacker to the tune of about a second. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, if anything, has become the pick between them on the track. Dakota DeMade is also cycling in front of them, too.
Yeah, and notice who is at the front of this train here is Nick DeGroot, so he is cycled to your net race leader potentially, assuming that everybody is now sort of on that same sort of pit cycle. It very easily could be now Nick DeGroot's race to win. But, oh, look at that close action there between Dakota DeMade and Shane Coogan.
Well, he wanted to make it clear he wanted to get by quickly. By the way, those are two race first cars nearly making contact, as DeMade gets passed on by a few others. So things getting very intriguing on that mark with Craig Forsyth, Gavin Sanders, Jacob Oster, the best drivers in the fuel save mark. They've stretched it to a race-high 34 laps. Here's a look at one of the drivers in the conversation for the race lead when things settle down for the moment. Matt Taylor with the Moser Racing driver profile. 21 starts in this series, 2 victories, including last time out at the Milwaukee Mile, 13 top 10s, 7 top 5s, 2 pole starts. First win, of course, came at New Hampshire, and that was a big victory last time out. He was a conversation member of the championship fight last season too, Andrew. He's in the conversation again this year.
Absolutely, he's in the conversation, but the one thing that Matt Taylor's got to do is he's got to cut down on the mistakes and the unforced errors that we saw plague his championship hopes last year, but definitely one of the drivers that I would expect to be there come season's end fighting in that fight for the championship. Of note, we just had the last drivers come down pit road, and I believe that was Gavin Saunders and Jacob Oster and Craig Forsyth, so they went the longest out of anyone on that last pit cycle, and they're going to have the best fuel numbers in terms of all of those drivers who have just pitted. Oh no, what happened now?
Black flag, Jacob Oster. Mistake on pit exit. Jacob Oster, who had been the biggest mover of the night, speeding on pit exit, it looks like. And/or potentially a blue cone violation. Oster will have to come down and serve a penalty.
Oh, it just isn't Jacob Oster's season, at least not the start of the season. And it's, yeah. You can see here, riding on board with him, I think he hits that too early. Yeah, he hits that pit limiter too early, and unfortunately, that's a penalty every day of the week, and just another unforced error from Jacob Oster, and it's really been the story of his season. Even when he got taken out, the reason that he got taken out in our opening race and he wasn't in front of the incident was because he made a mistake on pit lane, and it cost him time and put him back there in the opportunity to get taken out. So yeah, just really, really unfortunate there.
Jacob Oster, 31st spot now on the racetrack. He is 1 lap down, 44 seconds behind this pack. Speaking of said pack, Here's the interesting layer of this. Shane Coogan, amongst those who pit in this most recent cycle, leads. Nick DeGroot, who is amongst those trying the different calls last time, second. Then you have Hacker, Nunez, Wagner, Wood, and then Matt Taylor is the caboose for the train. The thing is, Taylor has to pit in the next couple laps here.
Yeah, Taylor will be coming down very, very soon, but that will put him on. So the interesting thing is who of these lead packs will actually be able to make it on just one more stop one more stop here, because right now we know that DeGroot has 2 stops. We know that Taylor has 2 stops. But does Coogan have 2 stops? Does Hacker have 2 stops? Or will they be able to stretch that fuel out? Certainly right now it doesn't look like fuel saving is on the top of the mind for either Coogan or Hacker, or Luis Gonzalez Nunez for that matter. But some of these drivers further back in this pack, you look at the likes of Craig Forsyth, they might just be in the catbird seat here as well.
See one driver peeling off to the pit lane. That is Dakota DeMaine, who starts his pit window. Approaching 54 laps to go this time by. It's the battle for 8th, and this is amongst the drivers who stretch it the furthest. The tough thing for them is they're 3 seconds behind those who are a little bit tighter on that margin. Forsyth lost a bit of time on his pit exit. Trevor Malone lost a lot of time on his exit. Gavin Sanders lost a lot of time to the point where he's only working with Michael Goodman currently. Taylor is also coming in this time. Taylor has dropped back to the point where he is now the head car of Group 2 as the leaders pull away from him as Taylor pulls in.
This is what it comes down to, is basically if you're Forsyth, if you're Goodman and some of these drivers who made it comfortably to lap 60 and beyond, you're hoping for absolutely no more cautions. You want this to go green at the end and see what you can do in terms of fuel saving. If you're Nick DeGroot, if you're Luis Gonzalez Nunez, or any of these drivers who might be a little bit iffy on fuel, you're hoping and praying for a caution here sooner rather than later so that you can maybe top up on fuel and really get back into a more advantageous position. Because I do think that definitely Craig Forsyth can make it. Potentially Michael Goodman, Joe Branch, Gavin Saunders, those drivers are definitely very likely to be able to make it from here.
By the way, in all of this, DeGroot has shuffled back from 2nd to 5th in the span of 2 laps. DeGroot is really starting to show the age of the tires, and this is an interesting wrinkle. It looks like the tires hold up very well until about 20 laps into the run. That's where it seems the cliffing point really kicks in the pack.
Yeah, I would say you're absolutely right on that, Justin. And you can definitely see that DeGroot is he's just holding on for dear life, and was just passed, in fact, by Andrew Wood, who we talked about a bit earlier, but he's really used this pit cycle to his advantage, and he's really gotten onto the back of this top 4 here. Looking very strong again for Andrew Wood.
Is that a surprise, though, when it comes to Andrew Wood?
It absolutely is not. He is definitely one of the stronger drivers in this field.
He's a rookie in Lionheart competition, but remember, he is a longtime veteran in open wheel racing on the sim. He can also be a very interesting and entertaining driver. We already hit upon what happened at Texas. But he's also very quick when it comes to a lot of the older body Dallara chassis and IndyCar chassis.
Yeah, so I was actually on a team with Andrew way back when he first started on the iRacing sim. And he sort of cut his teeth here in this very DW12 that he's racing now. And he's always, I think, felt just that little bit more comfortable in the DW12 compared to the IR18, and it's really showing here. Of course, he's also done some really great driving over in the CIS series in the IR05, so definitely think you're right that he just likes these older model Dallaras just that little bit more.
Based out of the state of Connecticut for reference sake when it comes to Andrew Wood. By the way, lap traffic now heading the pack, by the way, as well. The track conditions very much turning into a bit of an ice cube. It's 94 degrees Fahrenheit. That is a drop of 10 degrees track temperature already, with the in-sim time already advancing more than an hour.
And that drop in track temperature is going to be very welcome news for some of these drivers who have to make their tires last. Like Nick DeGroot or like Matt Taylor, the more that this track temperature drops, the longer that their tires are going to last into the fuel stint, and they'll have more of a chance to maybe fight back against some of these drivers that we saw have overhauled him. But for right now, that's not Nick DeGroot on the back of Andrew Wood. That's actually his teammate Jacob Oster, who's trying to fight his way and get his lap back the hard way after that pit lane screw up.
We'll see how this plays out for the 9 machine. If he can get around the leaders cleanly, he already gets around Andrew Wood on the high side easily. And right now, when it comes to the pace of Oster compared to the air, it's 41.9s. The leader's running 42.2s for comparison's sake. 48 laps to go. Along with Oster, more pit stop signals this time by the other factory back machine in this group. Nick DeGroot is coming in this time. DeGroot hits the curbing, though. That causes a little bit of a nervous moment.
Yeah, that was definitely not the way that Nick DeGroot drew it up, and he gets in very, very hot there. I wonder if he was maybe just speeding just a little bit there, but we'll soon find that out. But right now, the action is still on the track, and Luis Gonzalez Nunez has just quietly moved his way all the way up into 3rd position, and he's having a nice little battle here with Matt Wagner.
And we're talking about this, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, he's had good pace, especially in the past. But the main thing has been just getting himself to the finish cleanly. That's been the main struggle. Pocono in particular, remember him being very quick here in several different series.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, there are 2 different types of drivers that I find. There are the drivers that need to learn how to be fast, and then there are the drivers who are fast but need to learn how to be consistent. And Luis is definitely the second type of driver in that scenario, but it's often been proven the case, especially in top-level motorsports, that the fast drivers, if you can find a way to tame them, they're the drivers that can often have the most success. So for Luis, it's just about finding the right combination and the right mentality in order to get himself to the finish lines here.
Tough thing is, for the SimRace247.com machine, it's currently under attack by the lap cars and Paul Jenkins and Jacob Oster. So this is going to be a tough part of things with those who just pit, cycling right into the thick of things to give them a little bit of an easy moment in. All of this as well, Hacker and Coogan are building up a buffer because of some of that traffic. They're going back to the swap drafting again.
Yeah, and this is exactly what they need to do, especially with how hard the fighting is right behind them. If they can get a nice little gap over Luis Gonzalez Nunez, they stand a very decent chance of being able to break this draft, especially if they have a very good pit cycle. So definitely, if they can work together rather than fight, then it's a very good tactic for them.
See what the cycles have, well, cycled themselves about right now. The difference between some of the drivers, well, 5 laps. It's worth noting Nunez, amongst those who pit the earliest last run, he's the biggest at risk amongst the top 10, if not the top 16, to potentially not make it to that critical magic number at about 29 laps to go to get towards the end of this race for fuel.
Yeah, I think we can stretch it out to lap 90 and say that is basically the cutoff here. You really can't save too much more fuel than 30 or 31 laps here. So the 31 even is a real stretch because you have so much straight line running here that you just don't have the opportunity to save massive amounts of fuel, and the lap is so long you can't afford to run out of fuel on your end lap. So it's going to be very touch and go for the likes of Luis Gonzalez Nunez.
Some of that lap traffic looking to get their lap back. All right there, though. Paul Jenkins is the first one on tap. Looking to find a way to zip from the higher line. Cuts to the inside. Looking to get one more spot. Jenkins looking to be a little bit careful, I've noticed, though. Of course, these are the race leaders. You don't want to end up being too aggressive with them, even though you want your lap back here.
Yeah, but if you're Jenkins, you can't afford to sit back too much because you have Jacob Oster, who you're battling for position right behind you. So he definitely can't afford to just sit back here and wait. But I think he did a good job of waiting for a nice opportunity, and this is going to be a nice, easy clear for him through turn 1.
That's what I was about to say, too. Yes, you can take the first opportunity, but sometimes you maybe have the chance to say, why don't I wait the next corner? Because there's the chance to build up the run like we've seen down the front stretch at Pocono. Meanwhile, Gonzalez Nunez, he definitely can't make it. He's coming in this time by.
Yeah, he is definitely throwing in the towel here. That definitely means he's not going to make it, as Craig Forsyth gets a face full of arrow wash there. Really checks up Trevor Malone there on eggs, and look at Trevor Malone buried in the back of Craig Forsyth down the straightaway there.
No one likes a lot of arrow wash in their face, to say the very, very least. In that regard, caused a bit of a checkup moment that loses them a lot of ground, about 1.3 seconds back. By the way, nearly unlapping themselves as a result of all that sequencing. The 9 is right there to try and get a lap back as well. This is Jacob Oster. This could bring a lot of haywire moments for the race leaders, who no longer have that clean air advantage to work with, but they have that slipstream advantage. If they can use it right, Oster can't clear by for the lap back.
Yeah, absolutely. This is definitely throwing a wrench in the plans for the leaders, but at the same time, it's so important for Oster to get this lap back, because if a caution does come out, suddenly he's able to make up a full 40 seconds and be right back in the thick of things. So I can definitely see why Oster is so keen on trying to get by these leaders, but you have to be so careful, as we saw Paul Jenkins was before, to not disturb them as they're going around.
You don't want to end up scaring the race leaders, let's put it that way. Oster trying the high line, meanwhile. Trying to see if that works. Yes, it does. And just like that, Oster back in the lead lap after the speeding penalty. 31st position, however. So a long way back, about 42 seconds to try and regain, and/or has to hope for the luck of the caution flags to try and cycle things around. Coogan, still the race leader, though, in all this. Ron Hacker looking to take advantage. Coogan already taking a bit of a block down the straightaway.
Yeah, this is definitely... So one thing to keep in mind with this as well, Justin, is that this will actually stand to benefit the likes of Coogan and Hacker a fair bit. If he can stay with Jacob Oster for the time being, it's really going to help him in terms of potentially fuel saving, because again, I just think that Coogan, with the amount of clean air running that he's doing, it's going to be very, very tight for him to make it on the strategy that he's on with just this one coming up pit stop. But the one driver that I do want to keep an eye on, though, in this top battle that we haven't talked a lot about, again, is Mike Rigney. He's quietly just latched himself into 7th position here on the back of this train, and he's one of those drivers who's just so good at fuel saving and just quietly running here at the back of the field. I think that he might be the one to reach out and potentially grab this race here.
That's a great point, because the opening race of the season, he was amongst those who also was a benefactor of some of the cautions at Homestead, and he was in the conversation for the race win in those closing stages as well. I'm curious indeed on that 0-0, 1.3 seconds back of the race lead. That's swapped around again for Hacker.
Yeah, and we're, I think, going to have the answers sooner rather than later. And again, Hacker, I think Coogan's realizing that he's probably just slightly miscalculated his fuel numbers at this point, and he's really got to start saving here. But the interesting thing is that Hacker is just going full bore and even trying to get back around Jacob Oster here. So really interesting to see the different approaches in this top 5 in terms of fuel saving, and I think we're going to have our answers in the next 5 laps of who's going to make it and who's not.
I think it's really telling as well to consider Craig Forsyth. We talked about him after his pit stop. He was 3 seconds back of Hacker, Coogan and company. He's 4th in this train with a chance to pounce ahead, potentially here with some of the aero wash being fed to a couple of the cars. Forsyth closed up a lot of that time, as well as everyone else on that cycle, on top of Malone and Rigney, to be able to be in this conversation again.
And he's another one that stopped very, very late in that pit cycle, so he's got less fuel worries than everyone else, and I think that's part of what we've seen here from him, is he's just used that fuel advantage completely to his benefit on this cycle here, and he's really positioning himself well, you're right.
36 laps to go this time by from Pocono. Hacker still leads the train of cars around the racetrack. Clean air for the race leaders currently. Paul Jenkins pulling away. The last car now on track in the lead lap. Oster still pinned a lap down in what is now 29th position. It's worth noting as well, as the top 7 try and scrap it on a touch bit before their pit stop estimates. Dean Mull, Gavin Sanders are in Pack 2 and 8th and 9th. Pack 3, Isaiah Dupree up 19 spots with Michael Goodman and Joe Branch. Jim Herrick is on his own in 13th. Gabe Wood in Pack 4 with Jeff Chion. Everybody else is at least 20 seconds back.
And of course, it's amazing how spread out it can get all of a sudden here, because we've been focusing on the action that we've seen, and it seems like everyone's just nose to tail, but further on back in the pack, it really does get difficult on these long runs to maintain that pace. And once you start losing the draft, it kind of snowballs. So some of those drivers like Dakota DeMade and Matt Taylor, they're really rooting for some of those drivers in front of them to just keep on falling back, so that even if their strategy doesn't quite work out, they're still in line for a decent finish here.
By the way, Matt Taylor is still trying to scrap it out with Nick DeGroot. Their difference on pit cycle, 6 laps. They're about a third of the track up the road. Remember, based on the map the last cycle, they likely would be in the mix with the race leaders for a little bit before their next pit stop window. Speaking of windows, some of the cars that are laps down starting to signal in. Keep an eye on the pit lane for the race leaders, though. Coogan wants to lead again, takes it.
It's been back and forth, so this is really where it starts to get where I start to get curious, is who's going to blink first out of this lead pack. Is it going to be Coogan? Is it going to be Hacker? We know that Forsyth is going to go long. Will Matt Wagner be the first to bail out on this strategy? This is what it all comes down to, is if they've saved enough fuel here, then they'll be in 3 laps. If they haven't, it'll be less.
Those virtual crew chiefs definitely have to be starting to pace around a little bit. In particular, those who may have jumped onto the boxes as of late. Jason Brophy, seeing him jump off and on onto his respective box for Andrew Wood to help him out in the 64. Brophy won at the private label team Hype Machines in the IndyCar series for Lionheart. Pit stops expected by a few drivers. None of the top competitors coming down yet. But a few of the drivers in the mid-pack have already indicated they want to come in this time. Sam Crow's in. Also coming in, Isaiah Dupree. The window is open.
Window's open, and I really don't think that any of these drivers can make it. 32 laps is going to be a very, very tall ask for these drivers to make. If they 31? Do make, yeah, now the 31 laps, it's coming in here. So I think Shane Coogan is going to be the first of your leaders to blink here.
Ron Hacker has also indicated he's ready to blink with Coogan. Both stay in sync. Last time in the pit entry, Hacker nearly ran to the back end of Coogan on the send. Not going to have the same chance to send it hard this time. Bit more smoother on their entry. They bring Andrew Wood with them. Michael Goodman is also peeling into the pit lane.
Crucially, Matt Wagner, Trevor Malone, Craig Forsyth, and Mike Rigney all stay out, and that is really good news for all 3 of them. But really, if I'm being honest, they could all use just one more lap here, but I don't think that all of them are going to get that one more lap.
Malone's already indicated he won't get that one more lap. He plans to come in this time by. Gabe Wood amongst those also coming in. Matthew Short also expecting to come on in this time by amongst those chugging along. Rigney also is coming in. But Craig Forsyth is still chugging ahead. Matt Wagner had pressed the pitting this lap button last time by, did not get the chance to come in. He loses the race lead. He'll come in this time now.
Yeah, and this is big for Matt Wagner that he was able to extend it just that one more lap. It's going to be very important come the end of this race that he'll have enough fuel to really take the battle to Craig Forsyth. I do think that this will be the battle come the end of the race, Matt Wagner versus Craig Forsyth. Forsyth definitely has the fuel. Wagner looks like he is going to have the fuel as well. But some of these other drivers, it's going to be very touch and go for them.
Oh, and Forsyth stays out. Forsyth has elected to stay out now with that decision making. Forsyth stretching it further. Wagner does make it to the magic number. 29 laps to go. Gavin Sanders, the only other driver yet to pit in. It is worth noting that of those who have peeled in so far, here's an interesting thought. Luis Gonzalez Nunez is 4 seconds ahead of DeGroot and Taylor and about 8 seconds ahead of Coogan and company. However, he will have to pit again.
Yeah, so for Nunez, that's all down to taking less fuel on this last stop here. the last stop that he had, and he's been able to use the lower fuel and the fresh tires to really put in some blistering lap times, and he's done a great job of getting out in front. But unfortunately, because we do have cars like Craig Forsyth, like Gavin Sanders, who are definitely able to make it from here, I don't think it's going to turn out good for the 14 car.
For reference, DeGroot and Taylor were running in the mid-20s before this pit stop window. Forsyth, Sanders both into the pit lane. Sanders overran a bit of his jack. No speeding penalties though once again this entry. Jacob Oster also coming in 1 lap down. So Nunez cycles to the front. DeGroot and Taylor battling for what's now second on the track. Then you have the train of cars gaining quickly. Wagner, Coogan, Hacker, Malone, Wood are all in the lead pack.
And they're coming out right with Craig Forsyth here, so this is exactly what Forsyth needed. He is right in the mix with all of these drivers. That's going to allow him to keep on saving fuel here, and he knows he has the fresher tires. He knows he has the car to get around these drivers. He is positioning himself in prime position for this run to the finish here, Justin.
And the snake already starting to break out for a few drivers. Wagner trying to lead it. Oster is also in the mix too here. Forsyth with a bit of the fresher tires to the inside of Wood. 26 to go this time by. There's 3 seconds back still of DeGroot and Taylor, but are battling for the net race lead. Wagner has that net race lead for now. Wood with a checkup in the aero wash. 2 spots gained by Forsyth as a result.
Yeah, you can just see how much of a difference that those fresh tires make. Forsyth just able to keep that car nicely on that inside lane. Now looking to the inside of Ron Hacker into the tunnel turn here. Really, really close stuff on the exit, but looks like he just might be able to make it here through turn 3.
This is for net second with this cycle of calls. Can't make it work. Here comes Hacker with the run. Can't make it work, though. Had the check up to the back end of Coogan.
It's amazing what kind of a run you can get around the outside of turn 3, especially when you don't have anybody feeding you air wash in front of him. But Forsyth not giving up. He's down into turn 1, and he's going to slide up right in front of Ron Hacker there. That was a definite slide job from Craig Forsyth there.
You talk about playing 4D chess. Craig Forsyth making a 4D chess style move there. Hacker giving a little bit of a break there to the number 72. 25 laps to go this time. Wagner trying to dive his way about, as well as Coogan. Amongst all this traffic, Oster trying to put himself in position to be at the tail end of the lead lap.
Well, the important thing is, if you're Forsyth, you're seeing Matt Wagner going out just that little bit, because Nick DeGroot is, not Nick DeGroot, Jacob Oster is holding up the likes of Shane Coogan here, and he's just allowing Matt Wagner to escape just that little bit. So if you're at all worried that Matt Wagner can, in fact, make it as well, then if you're Craig Forsyth, you need to get around these two sooner rather than later.
Especially since Wagner is nearly a full second ahead of these cars fighting and scrapping. Coogan this time lets off as Oster now is in front of net second. Expecting more pit stops this time, a couple lap cars. Some on the lead lap are coming. Matt Taylor is in and bring out the open wheel snake at Pocono.
Oh, and Forsyth nearly puts it on the wall doing the snake there.
Trying to run to the bottom, trying to slide job in front of Coogan, parks the bus, nearly puts on the wall himself again.
Forsyth is giving it absolutely everything right here, but Coogan is not letting him get away with this. It's going to be Forsyth around the outside through turn 2. You can make it work out there, and Forsyth, nice move, completes the pass coming out of turn 2.
Now he looks to try and find a right around Oster as he clips the curbing. Forsyth able to avoid the wall and gets loose. Forsyth with a massive save down the straightaway.
And Forsyth has got to be careful here. He knows that he can't let Matt Wagner get away here, but at the same time, you can't afford to throw away making mistakes like that. So if he's careful, he knows he's got at least a second place finish here, potentially even a first place if Matt Wagner can't make it, but he has to get to the finish before that can happen.
Wagner's broken the draft though. Coogan back up to net second. Nunez has already pit. Nick DeGroot is the last driver trying to stretch it on his strategy call in front of the current battle for the leaders. Here's a look at what just happened here with the curbing. Look at this.
Yeah, and you can see the car just kept on wanting to rotate after it came off the corner, and then just got a little bit loose, and he was able to gather it up nicely. But now he's back because of that in a battle with Shane Coogan, and this is exactly what he didn't want to have happen, and exactly what Matt Wagner wants. Is Wagner wants to see this fighting continue as long as possible in order to get as much daylight between himself and Craig Forsyth as he can.
Wagner has nearly gone into the draft to Nick DeGroot, in fact, but the other drivers are already reeling back in Wagner. Within about 9/10 of a second the gap now, with Oster closing in and following that slipstream down the front straightaway. 21 laps to go from Pocono. The lead train stretches back to 10th position on track currently now.
Yeah, Dean Mull has done a really nice job of getting up there into that lead pack, as has Gavin Sanders. They've used that pit cycle to their advantage and really gotten onto the back of this train. I also think that this train is just slowing themselves up a little bit just because of how much fuel saving some of these drivers have to do, and it's allowed some of these drivers who weren't necessarily in the discussion before to now enter that discussion. Particularly, I look at the 10 of Gavin Sanders. He's really on the move here, and he's probably, along with Craig Forsyth, the best positioned out of everyone as Nick DeGroot finally makes his final pit stop.
So that is now the overall race lead. That's going 3 wide a bit. Forsyth, Coogan fighting along with the lap traffic. Forsyth takes advantage to move back to second.
And crucially, he's back into the draft of Matt Wagner. And Wagner's only 7/10 of a second in front, but Coogan is not letting Forsyth have a moment of peace here. He is harrying the back of that 72 car, and Forsyth has got to be thinking and begging in his mind to just let him be, let him reel back in Wagner, and then if Coogan wants, then the fighting can happen. But right now, the only thing that Coogan and Forsyth is fighting is going to help is Matt Wagner.
See that already on the stopwatch with the slip again by Coogan right back. Back within about 6/10 immediately with the swap around for position, losing about 2/10 throughout the corner. Back and forth they go, under 20 laps to go. Wagner looks to run away. The other drivers looking to regather the momentum as they block to the inside of turn 2. Here's a look at Sanders. He's back to 7th.
What a hornet's nest in front of him, and this is actually some of the hardest running that you'll have here, because if you're Sanders, you have fresh tires, you want to go fast, you want to get through these drivers, but they're also definitely fuel saving in front of them, so that causes them to change their braking points, change their lifting points, and you have to be so on your toes to make sure you don't run into the back of someone here.
Andrew Wood trying to make a move on the outside, meanwhile, with Trevor Malone to the inside. Wood up to 4th. Malone gets snappy loose coming off turn 1. Ron Hacker looks to try and cut ahead as a result of that. Can't get the run he's looking for.
Amazing how... Oh, go ahead.
Was about to say, even battles like this one are going to be costing these drivers time. They've lost about 8/10 with that sequence.
Yeah, it's all... You have to really be playing 4D chess. We have... I keep using that euphemism, but at the same time, it really is true that you have to not only consider the move that you're making right now, but the implications of that move and what it's going to do 2, 3, 4 laps down the road. Are you going to be able to maintain momentum? It's so important at a time like this, at this stage of the race, to really make sure that you're thinking every move through, not just now, but into the future as well.
Part of the euphemism, too, keep in mind, is Craig Forsyth drives for 40 Sim Racing. So that's where that euphemism really comes into play, with the driver who used those types of moves to take the victory at the start of the season. Now, looking over towards Malone, looking to try and hold off Sanders. Sanders just decides, let's go high side to try and battle it 2 by 2.
And this is exactly what Sanders needed to do, get some clean air, use that little bit of fresh tire advantage, but Paul Jenkins is going to block the progress just a little bit, force Sanders back down behind Malone here. So just not no type of braking here. And here comes Dean Mull.
Sanders was able to not get himself trapped behind there. He was able to pull him to the inside of Malone. Mull can't take advantage. Sanders up to a race-high 6th.
Sanders in 6th, but Malone is going to try and hang it around the outside, and I think he might be able to maintain momentum coming off of turn 3 here, and this battle is just going to keep on keeping on as Malone gets right back in front of Sanders.
Meanwhile, Wagner, his gap has closed. Coogan is there. He's brought Forsyth with him. 3 cars fight with under 15 laps to go now.
And now the question is, can Coogan make it? I really don't think that he's going to be able to make it. But Matt Wagner, he definitely stands a decent chance of making it, particularly if he does this. Getting in behind Shane Coogan here and letting Shane Coogan lead the race, letting Matt Wagner save fuel right behind him. But you can't save too much fuel because that 7240 sim racing car, Craig Forsyth, he's right there and he's even better on fuel than Matt Wagner is.
He pulls up the slipstream on Wagner. Wagner thought of a block. Tries to go for a squeeze instead. Can't make it work on the high side, though. Loses a bit of ground. Still holds on to third, however, as Wood is back in the conversation again.
But look at this run from Forsyth.
Forsyth to the right side. Inside for Wagner. To the tunnel turn this time. Wagner tries to slide up, can't. Forsyth zips on by.
Oh, that was some tight stuff. They got very, very close to the wall and to each other. They're coming off of 2. But Forsyth is now in the catbird seat. He is right past Matt Wagner. He's on the back of Shane Coogan. I think all Craig Forsyth needs to do is sit in here behind Shane Coogan, but he's not content to that. He's going to try and go for the race lead here.
Forsyth inside. Coogan outside. Coogan the better pull. Coogan the better exit. He holds on, coming to 12 laps to go this time. Here comes the draft, though. Forsyth elects to wait.
Yeah, discretion really is the better part of valor coming through the tunnel turn more often than not. You can go through there turn 2 in a pinch, or 2 wide in a pinch, but you really don't want to make a habit of it. So definitely a smart move from Forsyth, but the key is to not do too much of this. Don't run side by side. Because what that's going to do is just allow Matt Wagner to use the draft off of both of you and stay in this fight here.
Or you can have Forsyth go for the slide job. He's tried several of these. He makes it work. Forsyth to the race lead, but here comes Wagner. He pulls back in the slipstream again for Dark Horse Racing.
And just listen to Wagner let off through that tunnel turn. He's definitely saving just a little bit of fuel. And I think running as much as he did in that clean air has definitely hurt his fuel economy. So he's definitely going to have to be mindful of that fuel number as this race comes down. But the question is, has he saved enough to really take this battle back to Craig Forsyth here?
Oh, he's trying to take it to Coogan still for second. Coogan, though, with the preferred line for the entry. Wagner with the preferred line on the exit moves back to second, approaching 10 laps to go. Mind you, 4th on back. They've lost ground yet again, interestingly enough. Wood and company have dropped back around half a second back. Sanders is saying, I've got to get going. He's trying to pass Hacker because of that.
Yeah, Sanders definitely looks the raciest out of all of them, and I think it just comes down to fuel. He is able to turn it up full rich, and these others just aren't at this point. So Sanders is definitely the car on the move. He is into 5th place, and he is closing fast on the back of that 64 of Andrew Wood.
Top 9 separated by 2.3 seconds. 10 laps to go from Pocono in the first Triple Crown race of the season. Sanders amongst those on the same strategy call as the race leader Craig Forsyth fuel-wise. He looks to try and pounce his way ahead, but he has to find a way to gain 4 spots to have a chance to battle with the 72.
And this is really the type of run that we expected from Gavin Sanders so far in this race. So far this season, he hasn't had the best luck, but at the same time, he's shown a lot of speed, and he's showing it right here that when he gets the strategy right, when the luck's on his side, he can definitely be one of the people at the sharp end of the grid.
Here comes Wagner, though, for the race lead again. Forsyth takes it to the inside, looks to send it from the curbing. Wagner tries to dive it and nearly hits the wall with the arrow wash. Wagner forced to check up yet again. That allows everybody else to regain a bit of ground, including Coogan and company.
And Sanders did manage to get around Wood into turn 1 there, so now put Gavin Sanders up to 4th position. That 10 car is closing rapidly on the lead of this race, and you can tell that the gloves are off now, Justin. There are no holds barred, and they're taking every risk in the book to try and take this win home.
Jacob Oster is now letting by the other race leaders in the pack. He appears on up the group. As a result of a request from some of the drivers, he has now backed himself out of it. Meanwhile, Wagner He's having to hold off several cars. Coogan is back in the fray. Sanders looking to run high side. Gets the run off turn 1. Coming towards the tunnel turn, he elects to wait again. Tries to be cautious to set this up for the pass.
Yeah, I think Sanders knows that he's got the freshest tires out of everyone here. He's got the ability to turn up the wick. It's all a matter of just making that moves happen at the right point in time and not getting too caught up here. As we see Shane Coogan nearly get into the wall, and Gavin Sanders looks like he's going to try and take advantage here down the front straightaway.
The inside slipstream, though, given to Coogan. Coogan fully clears. Sanders not able to take advantage of the checkup as a result of the draft. Still plenty of time to work with. Less than 7 laps to go, Andrew, to set this up for the race win.
Plenty of time to go, but Craig Forsyth is lap by lap just getting ever so much further away from this pack here. So you got to be careful if you're Sanders that you really can't let Forsyth get too far out if you're going to have a real good shot at this come lap 120.
Here's the counterpoint, though. Forsyth, despite all this, and with the slipstream closing things up with the race leaders, is reeling in lap traffic. And that includes 25th Will Gibson, 24th James Watson, as well as Dakota DeMay. Those cars about 15 car lengths up the track could become a factor in the final stages, depending on how things fare out of the pace. Wagner, he's back under attack by Coogan. Sanders trying to line up with somebody, anybody. Back to single file.
Yeah, second and third really need to sort themselves out quickly and decide who is actually fast enough to lead them back up to Craig Forsyth. Otherwise, Forsyth is just getting an almost insurmountable lead at this point. And to your point about those lap cars, I really think that those lap cars may actually benefit Craig Forsyth because it's going to allow him the advantage of a draft down one of these long straightaways very soon. So it could potentially just allow him to get past the drafting point of these cars behind, particularly if they keep running side by side like this.
Oh, and a big slide! Wagner nearly to the wall. They keep it straight, however. This loses them a ton of ground, though. Forsyth, with under 5 laps to go, leads by 0.8 of a second over Coogan and Sanders.
This may be the opportunity that Sanders need. Coogan and Wagner were going toe-to-toe, and they had very similar tires. Sanders, now with the fresher tires, this is really going to present him with a golden opportunity to get into second place. The question is, has he just gotten too far behind Craig Forsyth to really reel him in?
Approaching the point of no return, next time by, next flag from that point forward would end the race. To the inside, Coogan again feeds dirty air to Sanders. Sanders loses ground. Forsyth with a big cushion. This could be tough to close back in for these drivers with 3.5 laps to work.
Forsyth doing everything right here. He has gotten out to this nice big lead, and it's just going to be so difficult for Coogan and Sanders and Wagner and the rest of them to reel him in. Just a really strong run here from Craig Forsyth.
The battle for second lost about a 10th that corner exit. Sanders trying to find a way to get up to P2. Can't get it to work. Sanders electing just to ride. Under 3 laps to go at Pocono.
Yeah, Sanders, if he's going to get to Craig Forsyth, he's got to make the move this lap in order to have any shot at getting enough momentum to get back to Craig Forsyth. But at this point, I think that it's definitely Craig Forsyth's race to win.
Especially since, keep in mind, with that difference in the tires as well as the pace showcased by Sanders and how comfortable he is on the fuel, if Sanders gets forward, if there's enough time, he might be able to lead both of them into the fight. 9/10 the gap, 2 to go.
Yeah, I think Coogan knows that he's got to save whatever fuel he can at this point, but he just can't let Gavin Sanders by, because the minute that he lets Sanders by, he's going to be a sitting duck for the cars behind him at this point, so late in this run. But it's actually really impressive that they have made this last stint here last as long as they have. But Sanders, I think it's just too little too late at this point, but he definitely stands a very good shot at getting second here on this final lap.
Your strategy has always been big when it comes to Lionheart Speedway Series, and the final time around is underway for Craig Forsyth. White flag waves. Final time around at Pocono. 8.87 seconds the gap. Forsyth rolled the strategy dice at Homestead, He rolled it again at Pocono, trying to stretch the fuel. He's about 2/3 of the way from victory 2 of the season.
Craig Forsyth has played this absolutely perfectly here. But gotta say, hats off to all of these drivers who somehow made this strategy work and somehow made this fuel last. But right now, it's all about Craig Forsyth, Justin.
For Craig Forsyth, 40 chess shows itself effective again. He wins the GRAAFix Esports Pocono 300, presented by Extreme Scoring. Craig Forsyth, his first Triple Crown victory in this series. Absolutely huge for the point standings, and absolutely huge for the complexion of the fleet early. The first multi-race winner of the season.
And Gavin Sanders, P2, as Shane Coogan runs out of fuel coming towards the line off of turn 3. So Shane Coogan relegated to P3 there on that final lap.
But what a run for Craig Forsyth. At one point, trying to stretch the fuel, he dropped as far back as 3 seconds behind the battle for the race lead. He ends up becoming the car who controls said fight at the checker flag. As he'll get the chance to celebrate in HyperX Victory Lane his second victory of the 2022 Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing Campaign, and it's a Triple Crown race to boot.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal race from Craig Forsyth. He did everything picture perfect, played the fuel game perfectly, was patient when he had to be, and then when he needed to be, he was fast, and he went straight to the front, put his stamp on this race, and those donuts are picture perfect, just like the race that he put on. 40 Sim Racing has showcased they can make decisive moves when it comes to strategy. The second time this season Craig Forsyth has rolled, bit of a different gamble on strategy, and both times it's worked out. He beats Gavin Sanders by 1.185 seconds. Sanders, a career best for him. Shane Coogan finishes in third, also one of his best finishes of the season. With Matt Wagner, Ron Hacker rounding out the top 5. Andrew Wood finishes in 6th with Mike Rigney, Trevor Malone, Dean Mall, and Joe Branch rounding out the top 10 of the sim race 24/7 on official race results. 11th spot tonight went the way of one Michael Goodman, with Jim Herrick in 12th. Luis Gonzalez Nunez on a different strategy finished 13th. He was in the conversation for the lead at one point, but Nick DeGroot in 14th. Matt Taylor finished 15th. Samuel Ryman, after a rough qualifying performance, covered 16th. Ricky Hart in 17th. Gabe Wood with one of his better runs in 18th. Chris Fowler, Dakota DeMay, the top 20. 21st spot went to Jeff Gion with Will Gibson. James Watson rounded the lead lap. Separation 1st to 23rd, 40 seconds. Paul Jenkins and Jacob Oster lost the lap at the end, but George Zotto 26th. Isaiah Dupree had to make an extra pit stop late, finished 27th as a result. Sam Crow in 28th. Matthew Short, Gonzalo Munoz, the top 30. 31st spot tonight went to Big Joe Hasser. 2 laps down after struggles in the mid-race. Gary Godsell finished 32nd. Mike Gibson finished in 33rd. And then the DNFs. Bert Hawkins III, Tony Shawan make contact, no caution was triggered. Both ended the race in the midway portion of the event. Ryan King crashed as well without a caution in 36th. Christian Jasper mentioned he was RIP in pepperoni. Instead of finishing, he finishes 37th in paddock. Hugo Gallus in 38th, Creighton Carter, AJ Musselman round out the 40 drivers who entered tonight. Unfortunately, the factory-backed motorsports driver could not fix the damage. An entertaining one to say the very least for tonight's actions. That leads us into our post-race coverage. The RaceSpotTV and ESTV, the HyperX post-race show, powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. Let's dive straight into HyperX Victory Lane, where it is an emotional night for one Craig Forsyth. 40 chest is played again. Craig, you've done it again. The first multi-race winner of the season, and it's a Triple Crown race.
Heck yes. This has been, Jim winning the Speedway race left on Monday. Now me. This is a good day for, been a good week for 40 racewear, that's for sure.
It took a lot of work to position yourself to the front there. Talk us through that progression through the pack At one point, you were 3 seconds back after stretching the fuel tank on the previous stint.
Oh, and I sputtered into my pit lane. I thought I had overshot my pit box sputtering in. I got lucky there. And then on the final pit stop, I overshot my pit box again and actually had to back up, which is, I think, what put me back a bit. So, yeah, at that point, I knew I'd filled the car up so that I could be full throttle right to the end. And I knew a lot of the other guys were going to have to, because they hadn't stretched it as far, we're going to have to, save and be a bit slower. So I knew the odds were in my favor if as long as I could, get the passes made, and it worked out great.
A huge victory for 4D Sim Racing tonight. A huge victory for Craig Forsyth. Congratulations, Craig, on the victory at Pocono.
Thank you. Thanks to the Race First guys. Thanks to the 40 Jim over at 40 Racewear. Thanks to everyone. Thank you, guys.
Once again, that's Craig Forsyth, your winner tonight here at Pocono for the GRAAFix Esports Pocono 300, presented by Extreme Scoring. Meanwhile, for Gavin Sanders, a career best finish, second, his first podium in his career. The Team Race First Arctic driver now with us. Gavin, you were on the same fuel cycle as Craig Forsyth and had a chance towards the end. Your thoughts on a career best run tonight?
Yeah, it was a really good race. Being able to communicate with Craig and kind of the best strategy really helped us out. Obviously, huge shout out to Team Race First and their Monday night IndyFix broadcast, and 40 Racewear and the whole team that's put together every week. These guys are fantastic, and working with them really benefits me throughout all these races. And I think that goes to show with tonight's result for sure.
Strong finish for you, Gavin. Congratulations on the top 3.
Thank you.
That's Gavin Sanders finishing in second tonight, plus 10 for him. Shane Coogan had one of his best performances, 57 laps led. Shane, you sputtered your way to the checker flag. Top 3, your best run. How was it feeling?
Yeah, thanks, guys. It was, it was a solid run out there. Just want to say, shout out to the Race First guys, Team Race First. The 29 car was really quick today. Just been kind of playing it patient here in Lionheart so far, trying to get the car. Get the feeling for the car, but something clicked tonight, and it was a good run out there. Just want to say shout out to all the drivers out there. It was a good race.
You mentioned trying to take it a bit patient there. You were one of the more aggressive drivers when it came to the fight for the race lead. You were in the conversation early. You wanted to take the race lead very early. A bit more aggressive, it seemed, at Pocono.
Yeah, I think definitely. I think when you have something good underneath you and you feel good, you want to go for it. I think that was ultimately the shortcoming of our race there. Just didn't have enough fuel at the end. When you gamble and run out front, you burn a little bit more. And we were still able to fight there at the end, but it was awfully close, and we ended up losing P2 to Gavin there. So still a good race, still a good finish. P3, we'll take it. And again, just shout out to everybody here. Appreciate the good racing, and watch Race First every Monday night. Top IndyFix split. Got to give a shout out to my team there, and also Western Waves on the side of the car. That's my media company. So finally good to have a good run here, and appreciate everything that happens in Lionheart. It's a great series.
Congratulations once again on the podium, Shane.
Thank you, guys.
That's Shane Coogan rounding out the top 3 tonight. Like to thank him, Gavin Sanders, Craig Forsyth for taking the time to speak with us. Andrew, absolutely thrilling to say the very least for the Triple Crown race tonight. Strategy was expected to be big. It definitely became big at the end.
It was a strategy race, but at the same time, it was absolutely a thrilling race to watch it. And I was on pins and needles throughout those last 10 laps. Who would make it? Who wouldn't? Would Craig Forsyth be able to hold out? He did. What a finish that was. But now looking ahead at this schedule, 2 1.5 mile ovals coming up, but they're Atlanta and Kentucky, and they are definitely not your typical 1.5 mile foot to the floor type of ovals. There's going to be a lot of driving that these Speedway drivers are going to have to do, and it should be some really exciting action.
Especially with that race April 18th at a track known for being very slippery, Hotlanta. Once again, we'll be hosting action at 10:05 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:05 p.m. Pacific on April the 18th for the 5th round of the season. But plenty to talk about after this one. Plenty to discuss in the future. But I'd like to take the time to thank series presenting sponsors for their support. The Lionheart Racing Series and its Speedway Series. The title sponsor, Moza Racing, is revolutionizing sim racing with the development of industry-leading hardware and software products like their R9 direct drive wheelbase and GS steering wheel. Featuring zero-delay wireless technology and made from high-end materials, Moza Racing delivers the precision you need to race victory lane. HyperX. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows for all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. You're passionate about sim racing, but it always feels a little flat compared to the feeling of driving a real car. Now you can actually feel what it's like to drive a race car. Butt kicker, haptic hardware, and software are easy to install and let you feel every bump in the track, slip of your tire, and engine redline. Tactile feedback is so accurate and realistic, you'll be driving faster and having more fun than ever before. Next Level Racing is an industry-leading cockpit and motion simulator, manufacturer devoted to creating the most immersive experience possible for the global sim racing community. Take your racing to the next level and visit nextlevelracing.com. Gomez Sim Industries are makers of high-end esports equipment and controls, precision-built using nothing but the best materials available today. Passion and handmade craftsmanship drive each made-to-order build, bringing you a driving experience like no other. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com. And it's not just those names, but so many more that help make things click, along with the many partners for the Lionheart Racing Series. To learn more about them, visit LionheartRacingSeries.com. You can also find out more information on various competitions the sanctioning body runs. A wild one tonight from Pocono. The next time the Lionheart Racing Series hits the track, it's for the IndyCar's own Triple Crown race. Taking place this upcoming Saturday, on April the 16th for the Butt Kicker Pocono 500, presented by Next Level Racing. Coverage starts at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Next time the Speedway Series hits the track, as mentioned, Atlanta Motor Speedway for the GSI Atlanta 200, presented by Next Level Racing. Coverage starts 10:05 p.m. Eastern. But with that, it's time to say goodbye from the Pocono Mountains. For Arjuna Kakipati and Andrew Kinsella, my name's Justin Prince. Thanking you so much for tuning in for tonight's action here on RaceSpotTV and ESTV for the first Triple Crown race of the season for the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing. Congratulations to your race winner in Craig Forsyth. He takes the checkered at the Tricky Triangle. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.